welcome back to episode 9 of the Voorhees Pediatric Dentistry Startup Journey series that we're running here on the Dental Practice Launch Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shane Simmons. You know the man here if you're watching the video, Dr. Dan Dienowitz. You've been following along his journey from kind of the concept of doing a pediatric dental startup practice all the way to now where we're at, which is Dan is literally recording this from his office. So the whole journey is kind of, coming to a close here as far as leading up to the opening. And what a series. This has been so much fun. It was the first time that we had done something like this as far as documenting everything. And, we were recording on late nights at times to, kind of squeeze it in with all the things that you had going on. But what's it like, Dan, to kind of finally get to this point where you're at today? You're in the office, your team's in the office, you're starting to see patients. Just explain what it's been like, these past, couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you guys during the day. Definitely, I think I look more well-rested as far as much as I can be. But today's our 1 month birthday from moving into the space at Voorhees Pediatric Dentistry. And first month, the word, everyone keeps asking me that, friends and family, what has it been like? And the word that I finally found appropriate was wild. It's been a wild ride. And because wild means both things: crazy, fun, insane, out of control, in control. I mean, it's just a roller coaster that is exciting to be on, for sure. I was, we were just talking about before we went live with the podcast how this past week it's finally felt like I have some sort of new normal. And we're still finding our routine day to day, but I'm now really mentally in this role and accustomed to it. Yeah.
So, now that you're in the space, I've seen, just from obviously social media and us working with you, I feel like that the team bonding has really been something that you've been able to do and focus with. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I guess just how fun has that been now being able to bring, people in that you see, every day to be a part of this story that you're kind of, this dream you're living out. What's that been like?
I've been thrilled with my team, and that's not just because I'm in the office and they can hear me about 10 feet that way. No, Amanda, Ingrid, and Trista have been awesome. I think we'll probably meet them on the podcast maybe in a future episode. And the team bonding started before we all met in person. First, we discussed in the past episode about how I hired them, how we did that fun video on my Instagram. And that, I feel like, just filtered through, making sure that everyone was going to be fun and cohesive and a great personality. So I kind of knew everyone would have fun with each other. And then I had an email chain going on in the week or two before we officially opened up, and people were already joking on this and talking about their favorite Disney movies and whatnot. So the team took on a life of its own even before meeting in person, which was a pretty neat thing to see develop.
Yeah. Well, it's been just really cool to see the entire thing. And today we're going to dive into, what are those final things that get done before opening, before seeing your first official patient. So it's kind of, crossing your T's and dotting your I's, I guess you could say, before the opening. And so we're bringing back Stacey Peters from Ideal Practices. Stacey was, on earlier episodes, if you all been listening to the series, and she's been side by side with Dan through this entire journey as his kind of startup consultant. Of course, you've met different Ideal Practices team members who Dan has worked with along the way. But Stacey's really been that contact for him and facilitating everything. And I'm excited because we're going to talk about, the process that Stacey and her team use before you go live, so to speak, and open a practice. So first off, Stacey, before we dive in, What's this like for you? I mean, you do this, a lot. You guys have seen so many startups open. What is it like to see from idea to commitment to then opening for one of your clients? That's got to be pretty special.
It is pretty special. It's very special. We're part of that, first call that I had talked about, on a previous episode. I talked about a vision call that we have where we learn what, the vision that the doctor has for their practice, their own unique vision and their purpose and their reason for doing this. And we talk about it all throughout the process as we're coming up with all their protocols and everything. We kind of weave it in, but to see it all come together and to see that final vision. He had talked about what he wanted things to look like, and then I get there, I'm like, oh, okay, now he had it all in his mind. I heard it from him, but then when I get there, I'm like, that's what oh, that's amazing. So yeah, it almost feels and it's different every time too. It's different for every client. We work very closely. We're obviously we're business partners in a way, but we also become friends. I learn, I get to know his family and his vision and everything that he wants, not even just from his practice, but even from life. And to see it all just come to fruition it fills my cup. It is every time I go to dress rehearsal, every time I do something like this, I think I'm so fortunate. I love what I do. And to see somebody's dream come true, every time I think this is why I do this.
Yeah, it's what a feeling. And getting to see, that throughout your career and see other people start to live their dreams, there's, I imagine, no greater feeling. We just feel it just from the small piece that we play from the marketing side. But when you're going through that entire process from financing to real estate to getting the team hired and getting into the practice, what a journey. And so that leads us to, okay, so we're about to open, we're about to see patients. Everybody at this point, I'm sure, has some, butterflies. They're excited, but I'm sure there's some butterflies because it's all new. It's a brand new practice. So there are things that, need to be practiced, I guess, if you will, or rehearsed. And that's where you have this dress rehearsal. So Stacey, can you talk a little bit about the dress rehearsal and what is that? And why is that so important before the practice opens officially and starts seeing patients?
It is so important. People they get in this mindset, I just want to open my doors, especially if they have any sort of construction delays or they, anything, or, they're about to have to start paying rent. They know they're going to have to pay bills and they're not producing anything yet. There's a lot of, emotion with them. They just want to get open. And, but there's a difference between opening and opening right. And I tell everyone, so once you get your certificate of occupancy, you then have 2 weeks of training. We have them go through several trainings before they start seeing patients. And it's important to have those 2 weeks. And I tell them when I get there for the dress rehearsal, I say to them, you've done a lot of button pushing over the last 2 weeks. You've learned a lot of things. You've learned your software. You've done a lot of, things that maybe in the order that we did it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And today we're bringing it into the form of a new patient appointment. And we're going to add in those special touches, that amazing patient experience. We're going to go from, what buttons to push to how do we make the patient feel comfortable, and, how are we going to incorporate the doctor's vision for that new patient experience into that appointment? Because we can fix buttons. If you push the wrong button, we can fix that. But you can't fix somebody's first impression. And that first impression, you think as a business owner, you think, oh, people will understand, I'm a new business, I'm a new office. If we make mistakes or it doesn't go smoothly, they're going to understand we're a new office. But they already don't want to be at the dental office. No offense, Dan. They already don't want to be there. And if something goes wrong, that forgiveness is not necessarily there because their nerves they're already, at this heightened state of, I don't want to be here. And, so that first impression, that first experience they have there is so incredibly important. and you have to practice in order for it to be perfect. You don't want that first patient, and we always tell them, but we don't want the first patient to know that they're the first patient. We don't want them to feel like it. We want them to leave saying, wow, I would never have known that I'm that first patient.
So Dan, when Stacey arrived and was going to be, you knew you were going to be doing the dress rehearsal at that point. Had you and the team met prior to kind of like chat about, okay, here's how we're going to do this, here's what is going to work, or were you kind of like, let's just see what they kind of how Ideal Practices guides us through this? I'm just curious, if there had to be any prep done before that. What was that like?
Yeah. So the 2 weeks that Stacey mentioned were absolutely essential, and we definitely did practice the new patient experience a bunch of times. So much button pushing in the first 2 weeks, so much unboxing of boxes and materials, and just when you think you're done unboxing, 10 more big boxes come, and I had a whole schedule. Ideal Practices provided me with like a bunch of like a great template for like how the first 2 weeks should go, but then like these like distractions come from left field, like 10 boxes, or oh my god, I didn't order that essential material that I need for day one. So like all of a sudden these little fires come, which is like just how practice ownership goes. So that's all to say that yes, we did eventually start practicing the new patient experience. Part of that is, it's from walking through the door, the smile you see, how the front desk is going to greet them, and then the tour, who's going to do the tour, how we're going to smoothly hand things over, really getting those 5-star, touches, in, and then the kind of the parts that were like a little awkward were polished over when Stacey came on that dress rehearsal day.
So yeah, when the dress rehearsal happened, Stacey, are you playing patient? Do we have like a family member or somebody come in play patient? What does that look like? And is it like you're on the whole time, through it, or are you stopping at certain parts along the patient experience to be like, hey, we should correct this, or walk us through that.
Yeah. So I like to start the day with kind of reviewing why everyone's there. I like to go over the doctor's vision. In this case, we went over Dan's perfect review, the ideal review that he came up with well over a year ago. And we got to compare like what his vision was to really what happened in the office. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was well thought out, and it did come true. Almost everything in there, except for he named his front desk people, and their names are different, but and the name of the office was different too. But it was amazing to see it that way. So I start with, letting the team know. Obviously, I think with Dan, it's obvious who you're working for, the kind of person that you're working for. But I like them to know, like, we've been all business for the last couple of weeks. I want you to understand what you're a part of, what the kind of vision that you're a part of, who you're working for, what a really cool vision that you're a part of. So we review that a little bit. And then, before we actually walk through the patient, I like to verbally talk through the patient appointment. So that way, the dress is kind of, thrown into it. Let's talk about different ways we can, make this an amazing patient experience. We don't want it to be just a good one. We want to add all these little elements to make it an amazing experience. So we talk through that, and there's a little bit of button pushing too, because we have to talk through, some technical things like insurance and some of the protocols that Dan and I had created throughout the process, how the office is going to handle money, that kind of thing. So we do have to talk about some logistics there. But we really focus on talking through that appointment. And then we see a patient through the appointment. Now with pediatrics, it's a little bit different. Because it is a longer appointment, and it's really tough to make a child, sit through that. So when I work with a general office, we actually have them bring in a patient, usually a family member or a friend, that has some time, that's willing to sit through it and give us some feedback. In this case, Michelle, the doctor's wife, was a very good actress because she played both roles of the patient, the child, and the mom. So she was fantastic. I mean, we should have recorded her because she was actually comical. It was funny.
That sounds like Michelle, just juggling
Yeah.
everything all at once and doing it, great.
Absolutely. Oh, it was so Michelle. Yeah. And she, she actually had some really good questions. I mean, as a mom, she kind of brought that in. What questions would I ask for my child, to advocate for my child? As a child, she clearly knows children because she would ask questions like that as a child would. So it was really cool. So it wasn't like we're faking everything. But what I tell the team, like, what we don't want to do is say, okay, and then we would do this, and then we would do that. We need to actually do it. Because part of the dress rehearsal, too, in all honesty, is I don't care how long you've been an assistant or how long you've been a doctor, you're in a new place with new software. And even if it was just a new place, but you've used the software and you've used the tools before, it feels like you're cooking in someone else's kitchen. So you're just thrown off no matter what. So in addition to us perfecting this patient experience, we need to uncover, things that might not work. What if the chair is broken, or what if the x-ray, something was wrong with it? We need to, use these things to actually, make sure that everything's functioning. We leave that day with a list of challenges, a list of things we need to practice, a list of things we need to buy that we forgot. So you leave with a grocery list of items to work on. And which is why I like there to be a little bit of a buffer typically between the day we have our dress rehearsal and then the day they start seeing patients. So there's usually, I try to make it so there's a day in between in case we need to get a tech in there or something to fix something. But yeah, Michelle was the patient. She did a great job. And then after we practiced through the patient, the girls had some specific questions. His team had some amazing questions about, treatment plan presentation, things that they weren't 100% comfortable with. And they wanted to review those things, which, so they kind of guided the rest of the dress rehearsal that day because they had specific things that they wanted to make sure they were truly comfortable with. And they nailed it. They did such a great job. And, they did. A lot of times I have a hard time getting them to like role play and to, that's why we have a real patient because it's not role playing when you do it that way. But they're all about that. They're like, give me some verbiage and tell me what to say. And then can we practice it? And, can I pretend she's the patient? Can we practice it? They were so involved and so invested in this. You could tell they really wanted to do everything the right way. They are a fantastic team. They're one of the best teams that I've seen in a long time. And I don't leave every dress rehearsal saying that because sometimes I have to be honest with the doctors about, it doesn't do you any favors for me to tell you that everything's perfect when it's not. Everything was perfect.
And so, Dan, for you, going through that dress rehearsal, seeing, we'll get to your kind of part of it here in a minute, but let's start with like what Stacey's saying there about the team and the engagement that they were showing, the questions that they were asking. For you as the leader, what did that feel like? And were there any things that maybe even surprised you, like, oh, wow, like I didn't even, think about that. And she asked that question.
Yeah. Well, the role that I've been assuming now is practice owner. You got to work on the practice, not just work in the practice. And it's something that I had seen a lot of in the first 2 weeks. And then when the dress rehearsal came, I realized it's not about me just doing the tour, but also, and like the dental exam and everything, but coordinating and making sure that both the front and back of the office were, operating efficiently and well. So I couldn't just be along for the ride. I also had to, listen out of both, ears. And while my, dental assistant was working with the patient and, talked to them about oral hygiene, I went back up front and was working on insurance stuff with my front desk. So, you really got to juggle and just be able to kind of switch your mind back and forth all day.
So during this, you mentioned something there earlier, Stacey, that I thought was really insightful, and I actually took a note of it. You said there's a difference between opening and opening right. And to go back to some of the things that you catch along that, because like you said, it's hard to simulate right before for the opening. And maybe this doesn't even apply necessarily to Dan's office, but what are maybe some common blind spots that you see in a startup practice before opening that, you know, you've seen just maybe throughout your history of doing some of these dress rehearsals? That way people kind of know what to look out for, and they don't make maybe the same, you know, we don't even need to call it a mistake, but they don't forget about something before opening. So what's a couple maybe common things you've seen?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest blind spot, the biggest challenge is learning software, is learning the practice management software. It's the heartbeat of your practice. It runs everything in your practice. And unless you happen to have hired team members that have used the specific software that you purchased and have used it, even, know it inside and out, unless you have that, it is a learning curve for everyone. And that's, on the list of trainings you need to have. Software is number one. You have to go through the software training first. One of the, in the industry, I hear it all the time. Oh, purchase this software and you can just watch the videos, and that might be okay for an existing practice that is converting over to a new software. But that's not the case with a startup. You have to go through that training. You have to get training. And, one of the things that, well, even, Dan went through this too. No one knows the software. The doctor's learning the software right along with his team. And the team is looking to the doctor for the answers, but the doctor's learning it with them. And so if you're trying to learn it from videos without actual training, it adds a level of stress that can truly be avoided if you just schedule software training and pay for some extra software training. And that's always, the biggest point I try to make. You really need to invest the time in learning your software, and you need to know that software, what buttons to push, before we even talk about creating that patient experience, because you can't keep with that patient experience if you're stumbling through the software.
And let me chime in on that, just to get real for a moment, that was the biggest source of my stress. I was so stressed out in those first 2 weeks because, I was new to my software and everyone else was. We had all used a different program. And so the first day, we didn't have all of our office computers. So we were all huddled around that one computer with a shabby speaker. And it was just like boot camp overdrive, and you can't absorb everything in one training. And I was just like really, just very, very stressed out. When we had our phone call, Stacey, you could tell it in my voice. And ultimately we kind of diagnosed that as like, it's all stemming from the software. I thought I was just like, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not cut out for business ownership. But it was really just the software. And then all of a sudden there was like a magical day about like a weekend where my team was all starting to become sort of independent, and I didn't have to be camp counselor at all times and come up with an activity for every single person. All of a sudden they were rising to the occasion and starting to figure out things on their own, which was beautiful.
That's awesome. And I think that's normal, Dan. Like everybody goes through that in business ownership and life. And I recently, I was listening to a podcast, and then it was so good I actually ended up buying a book. But it was called the book's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's a great book if you get a chance to read it, because I think every business owner should look into that, because he mentioned something that he calls the 1-3-1 rule. Now, obviously, when you're training and getting the team ready to go, there's going to be a lot of questions. But once your team's up and running, he had mentioned for team members to bring one problem. So what is the problem? What is the core problem that they're having? Whatever the case is. Bring 3 potential solutions they think for that problem. And then the team member provides one best solution that they believe for the problem. And so his point on this is it allows you to empower your team to start making some of these decisions. They're still running it by you, of course, but they're starting to make those decisions. They're going to feel empowered. They're going to feel like, you trust them. And then it's also going to take stress off of your plate when you're trying to juggle, a million different questions and things at the same time. So I thought that was a really neat perspective, and it's something that I've even started to, implement within my company too. But that's kind of what it sounds like, where you start seeing some of those team members, take some of that independence. That's like got to be the greatest feeling in the world, and even at this early on, because you're still so early on, and that's already happening.
Yeah, it was.
So Stacey, to go back real quick with the dress rehearsal, and just like the team and walking through that day, is there so aside from the software, with pediatric practices, is there even more so like a different, I guess, way of thinking about that? Because you, like you mentioned earlier, typically have little kids that it's going to be a bit more chaotic, maybe in times. There's going to be more of that, anxiety, those type of things. So curious to hear from the pediatric perspective, is there a difference there in kind of prepping these teams to get ready? Or is it kind of like, well, they work for a pediatric office, they kind of know what they signed up for in the sense of some of the things that they may see? I would love to hear kind of the contrast there.
Yeah, it's very different because you have two audiences, and two people to please. You have to, make the kid comfortable. You have to make the, child, make sure the child is having a good experience. But you also need to make sure that mom or dad is having a good experience as well. And sometimes there's siblings that you're kind of entertaining at the same time. So you do need to empower your team to make decisions, as long as they know your core values, and as long as they know the vision for your practice, and they can make decisions that are within your core values, they need to be empowered to do so. And that also means that they can't always stick to a script. So when we're talking about the tour and we're giving this tour, well, this is a verbiage you would use with the parent. This is a verbiage you would use with a child. But, if the child is running up and down the hallways, read the room a little bit. You can't stick to a script when, because kids aren't predictable. And so they have to allow themselves, to be able to like kind of make a decision on the fly. Okay, like this tour is not happening. Like this kid is not having it. And, and the nice thing about it is, his team, they have experience with children and they clearly love children, and they are able to do that and kind of switch gears on the fly. We talked about, even something as little as, make sure they all know where the bathroom is when they first get there, because you don't want a child to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of a procedure, because they're not coming back the same kid. And when I said that, they all knew exactly what I was talking about. They're not coming back the same kid. They're either coming back crying or wild or something, but they're not the same good kid that was sitting in the chair. So they were all, they got it. They understood it. So yeah, there are some minor differences, but you just have the biggest one is, because kids are so unpredictable, you have to allow yourself to veer from a script. You can't be so rigid that you're trying to stick to it so hard. And they were all super good about that and going with the flow. And like I said, Michelle was such a great realistic patient that she gave them some challenges when it came to that too. And I have no doubt that, they all give, an amazing tour and an amazing patient experience to each kid that comes in.
Yeah. And Dan, was there anything you just learned after that dress rehearsal? Good. It could be like a positive thing, or also a thing of like, okay, here's a good area of opportunity for us to work on, as we grow. What were a couple of those learning points that through the dress rehearsal you kind of picked up on?
Yeah, this goes back to what you said earlier about like you can be a great cook, but if you're cooking in someone else's kitchen, it's kind of a little bit of strange. So like I designed this office to be very not just fun and cool, but also try to be more ergonomic. I was trying to learn lessons from like my old treatment rooms, like, oh, I didn't like that there, I didn't have any space there. So like, just knowing where to reach for things. Like I was learning the space. I still am. I still pull the wrong drawer open when I go to get my dental gloves. But big things that I learned from dress rehearsal day. Well, yeah, delegation. Like I don't have to be the guy who does every single thing. I was surprised to learn that I don't have to run the huddle. So we have a morning huddle every day where we discuss what's going to happen with patients who are coming in, any issues we want to bring up, any solutions. And I always assumed that was on me. And I learned from Stacey that no, actually the team should be empowered to do that. And then I can just chime in, you know. And then I also learned how happy I am in dentistry itself. Like when I was doing the dental exam, and I was really in my sweet spot. Like I just have a script, but I also like it's just like my happy place. And so I realized, fortunately, how like on autopilot that almost is, and that gave me a little bit more comfort to think like, all right, I can work on the business now. Like I don't have to worry about that stuff. Yeah.
And so we're doing the dress rehearsal. We're kind of wrapping up. We figure out a few things that, all right, here's what we can look out for. Here's maybe a couple things that we need to order, whatever the case is. After that, I guess let me point it to you here, Stacey. When you finished up and let's say, you're about to, leave, and it's probably like, saying, leaving your kid, home alone, maybe for the first time or something. I don't know. What is that like? And is there any sort of like, words of advice, encouragement, anything like that you share with these startups? Because, it's like, there's always more comfort when you've got somebody there. But yeah, what are maybe some of the things that you say towards the end of that to just let them know, hey, you got this?
Yeah. So, I do try to encourage them, like I said, to kind of think outside of the box if they need to, or kind of go with the flow. But, we're also all human and we're going to make mistakes, and the wrong button is going to be pushed. So I always tell them, fake it till you make it a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of that. But also, allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. As long as they don't affect the patient experience, we can fix it. It's okay. And, you need to, a lot of people in dental are perfectionists and they are very hard on themselves. So I always let them know that it's okay to make these mistakes. Just don't let the patients feel it. And forgive yourself. Allow yourself some grace because you're going to need it. And allow each other some grace as well, because you're all going to need it. And so I try to make sure that they understand that. The other thing that I try to do is I try to encourage them or empower them to make somebody's day, because this is going to be stressful. And one of the things that makes people so happy when they're doing these things, and especially with Dan's vision of his ideal patient appointment, that's ideal patient experience. With his vision, I was able to say to his team and feel comfortable saying to his team, you have the authority to make somebody's day. And it's going to not only, help them have an amazing experience, have them, send referrals and have them leave an unprompted patient review, but it's also going to feel good for you. To know that you've made somebody's day. So I try to encourage them every day, try to make somebody's day, and also be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. You will get through this learning curve and you will come out on the other side just fine. So don't beat yourself up in the meantime.
Dan, it sounds like you have something there. I got to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's good days and bad days there, right? Like I go home and I can be on top of the world. Oh my gosh, we just, impressed the heck out of this family. And then the next day I'll go home and just like feel like a zombie and only focusing on like the thing that I like didn't do. I feel like I say this every day, but like I go into a day with a to-do list of 5 things I really want to hit, and it's very rare that I get through all or sometimes any of those things, because then I walk in and there's like other things. So practice ownership is all about priorities and picking the right one, and picking one or picking a few a day and hoping that you pick the right ones that will propel you forward to the next day. And and those priorities are sometimes silly. Like, it's not always about dentistry. It's about signing up with your phone service or making sure you, you know, registered with the right, state agency. Just annoying stuff, petty stuff. But things that have to be done to keep the practice going. So that's one of the other things that makes me huff and puff on the occasional night.
Yeah. And it was a roller coaster with him. We're talking about a lot of, fun things, and, it is fun. And at the end of the day, you open your dream practice, but Dan and everyone else, those 2 weeks, especially it's a roller coaster. He messaged me on a Sunday night thinking, I think I made a mistake. I'm not sure I can do this. Like, it is such a roller coaster. It can be so overwhelming and emotionally draining that the forgiving yourself kind of part, it's so important. And, I think practice ownership in general, especially through the first year is a roller coaster. One day you feel on top of the world and, oh, look at my production. And then the next day your schedule falls apart and I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. It ends up working out. But, Dan has done a really good job balancing all of those things and balancing the emotions of it and forgiving himself. But he's right. You learn as you go, and it's not all pretty.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is sticking to the vision. We early on with Ideal, you talk about what you want to be remembered by, and I was very clear that it was very little about dentistry. It's just being remembered by like my family and kids, and that I was a family man. I was there for all the after school activities and all that stuff. And so throughout the process of building the startup, I made it such a priority to enjoy my weekends still with my kids, go to the playground and stuff like that. And during the first month, I really tried to prioritize that too. The tricky thing was I did go to the playground with the kids on weekend mornings, but while I was there, my brain was not there, and feelings of guilt come. Will I be able to stick to that vision and my priorities and having a work-life balance? So one of the other things that has stressed me out, but once things started coming together with the dress rehearsal and the patients started rolling through the door, definitely made me feel better.
Yeah. And it's like it's just a personal development thing, over time. It's like nobody is 100% prepared for any new venture in life, right? It's like becoming a parent for the first time. It's like no matter how many classes you take, how many, people you talk to ask for advice, it's just you got to, experience it, and then you build and learn from that experience. And I think that's, because that's certainly, Dan, and I think a big reason that, we've become good friends too is, very similar with me. It's like, I want to make sure that, my, young kids get all my attention, after work, and feeling like I'm present with them. And it was, it's taken a while, and I'm still, it's a work in progress. But I think just setting kind of mental boundaries with yourself. And for me, it just is like an end of day routine. It's like, okay, once I do these things, then work's off until the morning. It's time for the kids. And so you'll learn that. Like, this is, again, you got a lot of different changes right now, moving. So I think, that just from my experience, you'll start to pick up on that. It's just something that you always work on. And Stacey, I'm sure you probably, have some advice, because you've seen people from first year of ownership to people that, in your mastery program that have been open for years. And like, what do you see? Does that, kind of, they grow, right? Like, people grow as conditioned.
Yep. Grow and change. And, I think, one of the biggest things that I've learned for myself too, is, and I've already said it a couple times, like forgiving yourself. You know what? You went to the playground, you did what you wanted to do, but your mind wasn't all there. But you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. Like, don't go to bed. Don't take that guilt with you going to bed. Forgive yourself and do better tomorrow. It's okay. It's okay to make these mistakes. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to have all these feels. And it's all part of it. And just to kind of accept that you're going through something. This is a chapter in your story that is just temporary, and you will get through it. And everyone will be better for at the end of the day, everyone's going to be better for what you're doing. He's happier. I feel like, I mean, he hasn't been open that long, but I feel like even just talking to him, you know, his worst day at his new office, it's still better than his best day at you know, someone else's practice. You know, he's still living his dream, even when it doesn't go, like, even if it's not dreamy that day, he's still fulfilling his dream.
Yeah, you're doing it, Dan.
Doing it.
Look at the paper airplane in the back. For those
Very
watching,
cool.
I mean, this is all become from in here to in reality, which sets me up for in the future episode. We may record one more episode before the in-person one. So just a kind of a heads up there to the audience, and to you as well, Dan. But for the audience listening, we're going to do it in, I guess, well, you wouldn't say in studio, in practice, podcast recording. So I'll be coming out to Dan's office here in the next few weeks with our photographer, videographer. We're going to give you a tour of the place. We're going to sit down, kind of talk about, what was that first day like seeing patients? What has it, been like since being in the office? Because he'll have been in the office for about a couple of months at that point. And then you'll get a tour. And we're really excited to provide that, especially for those who we've got many people who've messaged me, so they've been following Dan's journey along the way. And it's just really cool to see it all come together. And so before I guess we wrap this one up, Stacey, any last things that you want to say for anybody considering a startup, just as kind of a recap, or maybe it's somebody who's doing a startup and they're going to be opening in the next few months. What's just kind of like one piece of advice, couple pieces of advice, whatever you want to say, as far as, helping those individuals, open successfully and not just open, or as you say, opening right instead of just opening.
Yes. Yeah. So I would have two bits of advice. If you, my biggest piece of advice is you don't have to do it by yourself. You can, even the greatest athletes have coaches and, trainers, and even the best of the best have people to help them. And, it'll save you a lot of, heartache and stress and money, to invest the money in having somebody help you, whether it's Ideal Practices or somebody else. Like, it will save you a lot in the long run. And then, the other piece is, open right. Like, even if you have to delay your opening by a couple of weeks or a month, it's better to open right than to just open your doors. Put the time in, practice what you've done, and do it right. I mean, if you can't find a team, and you can't do it by yourself, delay your opening for a month and open right. And so that would be, my biggest piece of advice, whether you hire someone to help you through it or you're going to do it yourself completely. Don't open your doors just to open your doors. Open your doors the right way, right from the start. Live your dream right from the beginning.
So if any last, since you've now officially opened, any last kind of just like piece of advice that you would give to that person who is considering a startup, or maybe they're already in the process of doing a startup and will be opening here in 3 or 4 months from now? Like, any last words on this episode before that?
Yeah. Timing is not everything, and it is. It is because when it comes to building the startup, there's a set of steps, 13 steps where you want to like do things in the right order so that you are doing it efficiently. But timing is not everything, because I'm 10 years into my career and now starting a startup. Some people do it right out of school. Some people wait 10 years, some even longer. And for me, it couldn't have happened any other way, because I always had it in my heart and my head that I wanted to figure out where I wanted to live first. And so that ultimately was here in South Jersey, is where we're building our family and home now. So for me, that was the priority before choosing the practice location. So make sure that if you are considering a startup, to think about those things and where you want to be, that the location is desirable for you. And I think everything else falls into place. You can find, the right demographics for your practice within a 30-minute radius of where you live in a lot of places. So don't choose a town just because it seems ideal, but then like you don't want to live there or you don't want to live around there. Like think about how your commute's going to be and your family life and all those factors.
What Dan's saying is he's becoming a 76ers fan instead of a Knicks fan, right? Is that what you're saying?
I definitely didn't say that. But I also don't want to isolate 99% of my patient population. So, yeah,
Smart.
sure.
Play in chess, not checkers. Well, Dan, it's been so awesome to see this again. We're not done with the series yet. Stay tuned, everybody, for the future episodes that are going to be coming out, where we're going to really go through in depth kind of those first couple of weeks of opening and what that experience was like, what Dan's learned along the way, good and bad, so we can get that advice out there and that experience out there for everybody. And Stacey, thank you again so much for being on here, being a recurring guest on the podcast and sharing your insights, because we know that that you all played such a huge role in this entire journey. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and everybody, be sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Dental Practice Lounge podcast. You can see down in the show notes below, if you want to reach out to Ideal Practices, if you're considering doing a startup, you can find information about them there. Click on that link. Then also Crimson Media information is there too, in case you need some marketing for your startup. We're always here to help. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode.